and you'll be able to not be distracted by those things, and you'll actually be able to hear the important topic we're going to discuss today. Right before we started our video, we were talking about the difficulties and the possible potholes and hurdles and struggles about talking about a kind of what I call a going deeper topic. And this topic and this video is being self-focused versus other-focused. And for many people, we were talking about how that might be difficult to reach out to everyone. If many people have watched Yit's videos or my videos, they might understand better what we're talking about. If you're kind of new to my work and new to family systems or Bowen family theory, then this may sound a little foreign or a little alien to you. Do not be concerned. It has sounded foreign and alien to Yitz and I as well. So you're not unusual. There's nothing wrong with you, because we grow up learning to be other-focused rather than self-focused. And so most of us who grew up in dysfunctional families, if not all of us, have grown up to be other-focused rather than self-focused. And oftentimes we're not even aware of that. We aren't even aware of that paradigm, that perspective, that way of looking at things. And so when someone talks about that, it may sound like, well, what are they talking about? I just see people and see others and see myself the way I've always seen others see myself. And, you know, there's nothing abnormal or wrong or bad or unhelpful about that. That's just the way I am. Well, this information, I think, can help you to grow up, mature, become more self-differentiated, and also use as a means by which you can regulate yourself. And that's one of the three dynamics of self-differentiation: self-awareness, self-definition, and self-regulation. And this is about awareness and regulation. And that part of the process of growing ourselves up, as Jenny Brown talks about in her book. And so what thoughts do you have what thoughts would you have, Yitz, about, hey, anybody could be listening to this, somebody who's never heard about us or never heard about this topic, versus people who have watched maybe every video that I've put out there?
Well, I am very interested in the emotions that the people watching this are going to experience, because it could range from, wow, this is amazing, to resistance and these people are morons. So I'm curious kind of what people will respond to this. But I do think that this topic is the core of self-differentiation work, because as the title says, it's learning to differentiate between being focused on yourself and being focused on others. And that's what self-differentiation is. So I feel like someone that is not familiar with self-differentiation might not understand. And I hope that we do a good job kind of explaining these ideas and topics. And yet someone who understands or has a better understanding of self-differentiation, this would be considered going deep. Regardless, I think that this topic is a very interesting topic. And I think that anytime that I'm with a client or even with myself, this is like the daily struggle, is kind of always finding my own position and trying to understand, am I being focused now on other people or being focused on myself? And I think we could dive straight into it just to kind of get a better understanding of what being self-focused means and what being other-focused means.
Great. And in Kathleen Smith's book, Everything Isn't Terrible: Conquer Your Insecurities, Interrupt Your Anxiety, and Finally Calm Down, which is a Bowen Family Systems theory type of book, and it's brand new, and I would recommend anyone to read it. She writes on page 5, right at the beginning, she says, much of the world today is caught in a state of other focus. And I think that's a profound point. And I think it really is true. And we don't realize how much other focus we are and how little self-focused we are. I think of, and I thought I would use some examples about, and maybe answer that question or answer that comment about, well, what are we talking about? You know, what do you mean self-focused versus other focused? Because that's an emotional state.
Kathleen has in her book, she has a list of examples that I found some insight in, because that, in my opinion, these are even advanced kind of levels of focus. So obviously being focused on someone else could be thinking about them all the time and not understanding how you feel related to them. It could be blaming someone. It could be blaming, it could be on a bigger level. It could be blaming your boss. It could be blaming your parents. It could be blaming your country, blaming your life, blaming an event. Any of that could be other focused. And some of the things that she mentioned is giving people excessive advice, trying to motivate them, worrying about them, complaining about them, stalking them on social media, guessing what they're thinking, going out of your way to avoid them. This took me a moment kind of to understand the level of other thinking, because going out of your way to avoid someone
is still other thinking.
Yeah. Because if you were self-thinking, then why would you avoid them? You would just stay there and let whatever comes up come up, kind of. And another thing she mentioned is doing things for them they can do for themselves. So this is her list. I added some more on my own that I felt that people may run into in their daily life. And it could be trying to pull someone towards you emotionally when you're trying to control someone else, when you're trying to make them do something or think something or believe
feel something.
Yeah. Or feel something. Yeah. Doing what experts say. So I think even watching this video
ouch
could be I think even watching this video could be an expression of other focus.
Other focus, yes. But we'll ignore that one.
Just don't listen to that.
Don't listen to him about that.
Yeah. Asking someone to validate your decisions, not being confident in your own decisions, and kind of looking for answers outside of you. So the list could go on and go on. And I think the longer the list becomes, the more I realize I'm in some ways still in this trap. And I think it's human to be in this trap. The question is, when is it stopping to be healthy for me? Or when am I not interested in being other focused because it's not serving me? So.
And many times we hit bottom when that's when it changes.
Right.
When we realize we've been so other focused, as I have been growing up as a codependent, and finally I just can't focus on others anymore because my life is just going down the drain. I really have to get focused on me, or the marriage isn't working, or the family isn't working, or my job, or my career, or I just have to be focused on me, and it turns my head that direction. Can I share another layer to some of those examples?
Sure.
For example, she uses, and you mentioned some of her examples, giving others excessive advice. Another other focus is over focusing on other people giving you advice, trying to motivate them, being frustrated or yearning for someone else to motivate you is another focus. Worrying about them, that's an other focus. And worrying is an enmeshment state. Worrying is a fused state when we worry. And you say, well, doesn't everybody worry about somebody? Worrying doesn't do any good. It doesn't change the process. It doesn't fix a problem. It's just an emotional rumination is what it is. Not that we shouldn't be concerned about others. I don't mean that. We love others. We can be concerned. And love is not over-focused on other people, but we can get into love maybe at some other point. The worrying about them, now we can also be other focused by worrying about others worrying about me. You know, that mom feels hurt, mom feels worried, and then I get focused onto that. That's other focused as well. Complaining about them is other focused. And then me be over focused on them complaining about me is other focused. So you could take all of those and just shift them all over the other way and just build the list even longer. And because if that dynamic makes sense.
Yeah.
So all those have a corollary or a component on the other side that we will do. Doing things for them that they can do for themselves, kind of a codependent stance, other focused. But then wanting others to do for me what I can do for myself is other focused. So all of those have an other focus either way you go, on either side of the coin.
I feel like we're leaving everyone with nothing to do. They're left with nothing.
And right, all is lost. You know, give up all hope. No. We're going to talk about the hopeful side of it. It's just we're describing the common problem that we find ourselves in. The bad news is that most of the world is over-focused, including ourselves. The good news is we can do something about it. That's what, and we can mature, grow, and become more self-aware, self-defined, and self-regulated. And that's the good news. And I didn't know there was good news like that. I had no idea. I didn't know what you could do about it. I just wish, I would wish I just go live on an island. Then I don't have to be other focused. But why do I go live on an island? Because I'm over focused. That's why people would want to go live on an island, because they're over focused. So we can do something about that with not having to go live on an island. That's the good news. Or go move to the other side of the country, or go move where nobody knows me. But if we're moving because we're other focused, it doesn't change the other focus. It just puts us in a new geographical area.
But we're still over focused.
We're still over focused. We're still right. Other focus. Right. I'm going to slip and say over focused probably.
Yeah. I think other ways to understand other focused would be deselfing. So it would be the opposite of self-differentiation or borrowing a self. So when you're focused on someone else, you're basically borrowing through anxiety or through whatever, but you're borrowing part of the situation from the other person, and you're not standing alone with yourself.
Right.
So I think that would be another way to understand other focused.
And the bad news, what we've been talking about, because we're talking about the problem first, but the bad news is that we grow up wanting the world or others or husbands or wives or friends or parents or whoever to calm us down and to regulate my feelings and emotions. That's what we learn to do. And most every couple that comes to me with marital problems have all learned that. And they're still trying to get their spouse to fix their issues with their behavior. So they're other focused. And I like what Kathleen says in her book. She said, especially we want other people to keep us calm. If I'm anxious or upset, I want you to make me not be upset and anxious. And she says, she's talking about a particular example, and she says she had forgotten that someone besides her spouse could calm her down, herself. And that's what we have forgotten, and that's what we don't see. We keep waiting for other people to make us feel better, feel more confident, have more self-esteem, don't feel as reactive, don't feel as anxious. And we're waiting for others to behave in that way so I won't feel this way. And missing the part that we're missing the very person that can help us calm down, feel better about ourselves, love ourselves, increase our self-esteem. And you know, self-esteem comes from the self. So, but we're looking for self-esteem from others. And see, that's an oxymoron? I don't know what the right word is, but when you're looking for others to give you self-esteem,
It's not self.
it's illogical. You know, how is that going to happen? And so I liked her point about that.
Yeah.
The other, being caught in this state of over focus, on other focus, and I'm going to say over because I'm just so used to saying that. Forgive me. If I say other, if I say over, put other in there for you. You just have to retranslate my words. Think for me. You guys need to think for me. That's what you need to do. I shouldn't correct my language. You just need to think for me. We're caught in this state of other focused. And once you start looking at how other focused you are, just like Yitz was saying about his own situation and mine as well, boy, it happens a lot of places, you know, and that list is long, you know, and I do find myself gravitating that direction.
There really is something in our society, and I think also in many ways, family bring up their kids with this type of thinking, to see the other person and not see yourself. So there could be many levels to this. It could be emotional. It could be you need to feel your parents' feelings and not your own. You need to feel your siblings' feelings and not your own. You always need to help people. It could be with our thoughts, right? We don't trust our own mind, but we definitely can trust our parents or someone, or always look for someone who has the answers. Um, I think sometimes it could even be behavioral. Well, not sometimes. It could be behavioral when we're relying on someone else to do something for us. When we think that someone else is responsible for doing something for us, and there are so many levels to this, even on a cultural level. Like if you look at the politics going on, without taking a stand and without going into that, you would see that not many people are talking about what they are doing wrong in the situation. They are saying what the other side is doing wrong, what they expect them to do differently, and maybe even rageously go out to the streets and demand that in some way.
And being reactive to what the other side is doing.
Right. And there's something about our culture that really believes that we have to see the other person first, and we have to enmesh with the people around us. And I think the pressure comes from all levels of life. It could be in relationships, it could be at work, it could be with friends, it could be in deeper beliefs, such as politics or even religious views. And I think that when you soon we're going to get to the part where we talk about, okay, what does it mean to be self-focused, and even how to do that. But it's very easy to fall into that place of other focused, and it's going to continue coming up, meaning this is not something that you just turn the light onto
Or the
you and it stays
switch,
there.
right?
But
Just
it's
switch
always,
off and on.
finding, yeah, it's always finding your stance in every single situation, and especially in a family that doesn't function like this, and especially in a society that that puts an emphasis on other focusing. So this is something that it's always, there's always progress to make. There's always more maturity to gain. There's always more self to gain in such situations. So no one should go out, should come out with a conclusion from this video that this is something you work on and then you're
It's
self-focused,
over.
because that's
You're
not how
healed.
it
You're
that's
fixed.
not how it works. Yeah, as you saw even like 2 minutes ago when you mentioned that, correct me, and then you corrected yourself, understanding that it's your job to correct yourself. So
Right.
that's the level that it could get to.
Right. Right. And taking responsibility for my own behavior. Certainly, we can always give someone a pass, or we can retranslate what they're saying, but I don't want to give up my responsibility to speak clearly and to speak in a way that, that makes sense. That's my job, not your job.
Yeah.
you know One of the reasons why we're so captured by other focus is because that's where we began as infants. um, their feelings are our feelings are their feelings. There is no self-focus when you're an infant. There's only other focused, because that's all there is. They are, mom and dad are God. In fact, that's where we begin to learn what God is like, or higher power is like, even in the crib, because they are our gods, and we share the same personality, the same feeling state, the same. There's just such a tight dependence at that point, and that's totally normal for an infant. But as you develop and as we grow up, that becomes less normal. We want to become ourselves and a full human being, and not just dependent emotionally or enmeshed with others. Another thing I think of when you mentioned about we've been trained to be other focused when we're growing up as kids. And many times parents will use the excuse that I don't want you to be selfish, so I want you to be other focused. You worry about my feelings. You worry about your sister's feelings. You worry about, so I want them to be sure. I want to teach them to be empathetic. But other focused is not equivalent to empathy. That's not the same thing. You can be self-focused and empathetic. And so I think that's a healthy view of empathy, rather than just other focused. But I think so many parents say, well, I just don't want them to be selfish, so I'll just make sure they focus on everything else but them. Well, no, they could actually become more empathetic if they learned how to self-focus and to focus on themselves. They might be more empathetic.
How would empathy look like from a self-focused lens?
Having compassion, having a desire to listen to someone else, having a desire to stand with someone else, feeling without losing self. In other words, if you're going through a divorce and it's really, really hard for you, I would listen to that, and also think back about my own divorce and that it was painful. I'll bet Yit's maybe having some of those feelings. And out of that, I might say, it is really hard to go through this moment and to go through these times, but I'm here for you. I lose no self in doing that. I don't de-self. I don't stop focusing on myself. It's out of my sense of self that I can care about you. And that's empathy. Versus me over functioning, arguing with you that you should stay with your wife because I don't want you to be divorced, or triangulating with your wife and you and saying, well, your wife thinks this. Well, I'll go tell your wife that you feel this, and it's, that's where we're other focused in a non-empathetic way. But it looks like I'm doing kind things or good things, but it's not real empathy.
Right.
And I think real empathy comes out of real self-empathy. If you can feel for yourself, you can feel for others. Describing the word empathy and what it means. And we don't have to lose self to be empathetic. Just like if I work with clients, I want to be empathetic a lot. I wanted to tell them how much I understand. I want them to feel heard, but I don't want to lose me. I don't want to lose Jerry. And one of the reasons that I can empathize is because I understand this is not my problem. This is theirs. Just like Yitz, if you're divorcing your wife, for example, and that's just and you're not but if you were doing that, you divorcing your wife is not my issue. It's yours. It's your life experience you're going through. And I'm able to know where I end and you begin. But it doesn't mean I don't care. It just means I don't own the problem. And I don't give up my agency to make you feel better, because that probably will cause more problems than help, rather than being truly empathetic. Have I confused my answer? Does that make...
No. I would add to that empathy does not mean make the other person's life easier. It does mean that I feel their pain, that
I feel into their situation. Right.
Yeah, but it doesn't mean make their pain easier, because their pain is their pain, and they're gonna have to deal with their own pain, and same like I will have to deal with my own pain whenever that comes up. So that's just about empathy. We stuck that in there.
Right. But I think that's a good, well, we were talking about how children were being raised to be empathetic and not be selfish, but it often becomes, because of our own immaturity as parents, it often becomes training them to other focus, but not in a healthy way, just in an other focused way. Or right. That's usually what it ends up doing. But people will say, but yet the other people in my relationship play a part in my relationship. They are a part of what's going on with me. So how can I not be other focused?
That definitely is true. They are part of the relationship, but they are also a part of the relationship.
And just because they are part of the relationship, our focus does not need to be on them to deal with our part of the relationship. And that, of course, I know husbands and wives affect each other. Of course, I know families affect each other. Of course they do. And so I'm not talking about going into denial in terms of being self-focused. You go into denial about that. But you do adjust the importance of it and the purpose of it, of being aware of that. Just because I'm aware of that, for example, I may wake up one day and go, hey, my mother was a narcissist. Okay, well, that's helpful. it's kind of other focused. I'm kind of diagnosing her. Okay, but that may be true. I mean, it may be true. But now what am I going to do? Fix her? Get her to not be that way? Get her, I mean, what am I going to do with that other focused information? You know, what, and what we often miss is we then have to use that information to come back and focus on me. Well, how should I behave? What kind of relationship do I want to have? What do I choose in having a relationship with a narcissistic mother? But that's
Yeah.
my work to define, not my work to fix her or to complain about her or to tell all my siblings how crazy mom is.
Yeah.
You know, they probably already know that, you know, and it's, you know, I might feel a little better telling everybody about it. But that's only a temporary lowering of anxiety that doesn't
That
fix
was
the
the
long.
words that I was just going to say. In general, being other focused is a temporary um, first aid kind of option for taking care of such a situation. And it could work, right? It could work for a few minutes or maybe
It
even
could definitely.
longer than that. But in the long term, it definitely does not take care of the problem because you are reinforcing your own deselfing, meaning you are not maturing in the situation. You are continuing to believe that the other person is responsible for your own existence or for whatever that includes in it. And you keep on staying in the same rut, meaning as long as they don't change, then nothing in your reality could change. And that is definitely not an empowering message. I think actually one of the things that are calming at the end of the day, despite all of this hard work and despite seeing all of these truths, is that when we understand that we are in control of our own maturity, there's something very calming about that. Okay,
It is.
the second we understand we don't have control about other people, but we do have control how we respond to other people around us, there is something very calming. And it's definitely not easy to maintain. It's definitely not easy to be in the process all the time. But I think the more progress someone would make in this, then the more calm they would feel.
And you make a great point. In my way of thinking, there are two things that bring about the most calmness. One is powerlessness, which is what you just described. If we can own our own powerlessness, we can calm down and start to focus on us and do what is a healthy and mature. Second is to own our own grief work, own our grief or sadness about the way things are and the way I want them to be, and do the grief work. Those are two of the most powerful ways to calm down, has been my experience. And I think that can be a help to those who are trying to find more calmness, because that's when I've seen clients transform into greater calmness, powerlessness and grief work. Who wants to be powerless? Who wants to feel sad and do grief work? Not me. You know, I that's no fun. You know, and so those are not feelings that I like gravitating towards, but they are freeing feelings. They do allow us some freedom and liberation, and that can calm us.
That's very
The
interesting. I've never thought about it in that way. And there's definitely a lot of truth in that because any I think anytime someone would transition from other focus to self focus, there's letting go of some type of fantasy, and definitely letting go of a fantasy is there's grief in there, right? There's letting go of something that you've been holding on for so long, and you're
and
saying
hoping
bye
for,
bye.
wanting to change, all that.
Yeah, yeah.
The
So
dreams.
that was a very interesting perspective, and An
The
interesting insight.
powerlessness and the grief. And that's why AA and 12 steps can be so powerful or empowering, because we start out with surrender. Well, that can bring an awful lot of calmness. It's not fun doing that, but it is the beginning of real maturity and stabilizing our lives. Because when we focus on others, we give up our own agency. And sadly, it's a trap. If you focus on others, you're already in a trap. And by the way, we're not talking about not caring about others. We're not talking about not loving others. We're not talking about not having regard for others. It's about learning to focus on ourselves so that we do have love, regard, and caring for ourselves, which we have often missed growing up. And so when we focus on others, it becomes a trap that it's very hard to get out of. And that's why we wanted to talk about this topic today. I think questions are, I know one of the things I don't know where you were at yet, but one of the things we were going to talk about today was like how our questions can indicate whether we're self-focused or other-focused.
Yeah.
And what questions we ask and how we ask those questions.
Yeah.
A classic one. Go ahead.
She mentions in the book
if you want to go into that.
Yeah. She mentions in the book that when a question starts with a why, there's blame in there, right? When someone says, why do they do this? Why do I feel this? So there's
why are they that way? Why do they treat me that way?
Right. And it could also be with an I in there, like meaning, why am I feeling this? There could also be an element of judgment. And she mentions that she tries to avoid why questions. And you could ask, when do I feel this? Meaning, when they get me, let's take an example of someone who leaves the room anytime someone is angry. Okay, so
distancing, right, or what, avoiding.
Instead of asking why do they distance whenever tension goes up or whenever there's an argument, then the correct question would be to ask, what do I feel when that person distances? What do I want to do when that person walks out of the room?
What questions, when questions are better than why questions.
Yeah.
And often how questions.
Yeah.
Right.
How questions. I felt
how do I deal with my narcissistic father? And I go, right. Don't. Well, you mean never talk to him and never to see him and just ignore him? No, I didn't say that. I said, stop dealing with your father's narcissism within you. That, because you're trying to figure it out. You're trying to figure him out or want to change him or and again, it's not a crazy question. I have asked all those questions, why questions, over and over again. I asked, but I want them to focus on themselves rather than the other focus of, how do I deal with my father's narcissism? Well, let's learn to not deal with it. How about we do that? Well, that doesn't change my dad. Correct. It doesn't change your dad. It's not going to change your dad. But you're thinking that if you have some kind of tricks or techniques, that will change your dad. And it's like that's a myth. That's not true. So when your dad behaves in a narcissistic way, what will you do? How will you feel? What should you do to care for you? And that's different than dealing with his narcissism or that he's a narcissist.
This goes back to our video that we've done on how to stay mature in an immature environment, I think was the
Right,
title.
right, immature, right,
And
immature world, or
right. So if you look at that video, it has elements of this topic in there without naming it. And because that video basically focuses on allowing other people to be them with their immaturities without trying to change them, and focus on our own maturity in that immature environment. So
correct.
you were talking now, and I thought about that video, and I was like, it's kind of the same topic with a different title, from a different perspective. And that was just a very interesting. Just came up.
All my videos are on the same topic. They just have different titles because they're all about self-differentiation growing up. I mean, they just have different titles, but it's
Right.
all the same, because natural family systems thinking, and that it is just life. It's the biology of our emotions. It's how we function with one another. I think about one of her
What
examples.
other
Go ahead.
questions? What other questions would you suggest?
For versus, you mean self questions versus other questions?
Yeah. Well, even understanding, because I think very often it could be hard to understand that you're in an other focused situation, right? I sometimes it's not so clear that we're in that situation. So
Oh
what would you
no,
do if someone's in a situation right now and they're not sure even if they're other focused or self focused?
well, sometimes I will shock them at times, and they'll say, my my mother just judges me and criticizes me all the time. I don't know how to deal with that. And I'll go, so what? Not because I don't care about the client, not that I don't care about their mother's behavior. I want to shock them out of the other focus. And that's why I've used the so what before. Because I mean, does it make your pants fall down? That's a common phrase that I'll use. You know, why are you letting it make your pants fall down? You know, that's what your mother does. You know, that's what your husband does. That's what, and so if we can detach, we can then focus more on what we want to do, how we feel, what boundaries we need, and what we need to choose. But that can be it can be very scary to have that much freedom. And a lot of people are afraid of that responsibility and that freedom, and we'll resist that till the cows come home. Sorry for my Hoosier phrase. We will resist that until the cows come home, because I don't want to be more responsible for me. I don't want to be totally free to do whatever I choose to do, given the reality of the situation. I just want you to change and me to do things to get you to change. That's what I want to do. That's my goal. And so I will make responses or to shift them out of that other focus so they get back onto their focus. And I do what Kathleen does, and in her book she talks about, other focused question would be, why am I so anxious? A self-focused response would be, how do I manage my anxiety, and how effective is it? How does it contribute to my life? Other focused question would be, why doesn't my family understand me? That's other focused question. Self-focused question, what part do I play in the immature functioning of my family? And that I have such a driven need to be understood by these folks. maybe you don't need to be understood by them. And in fact, I'll say, why do you need to be understood by your dad? What will it give you? I mean, would it be nice? Of course it would be nice. I'm not, but you're making it sound essential to the client. It's not essential. It is icing on the cake, but it's not the cake. You don't have to be understood by other people to find understanding. It's you're trying to get understanding from people who may not be able to be understanding. That's where the problem comes. There may be 10 people on your street and on your block that would understand you, but we'll ignore all them. I want to go after this family who can't be understanding and see if I can get understanding.
Yeah.
And keep
and,
trying
and
to
at
get
the same time, you are not being understanding yourself.
Exactly. And I stay not understanding myself and focused in on this trap of other focus. And I focus, and I'm in that trap, and then I feel miserable, and then I feel upset, and then I yell at my spouse, and then I'm mad about life, or then I get depressed, or, and then we have all these other symptoms and acting out that we might do. And so I think becoming self-focused is so important when we ask, and our questions will tell us everything. Ask yourself, what are the questions you do ask in your life? How other focused are they, and how self-focused are they? Take a look at those when you ask those questions. I might add one other tip. When someone asks me a why question, typically we know that has to do with anger. Why, God? It typically we're angry, and so we'll ask the why question. How questions, or excuse me, when questions and what questions are more calm. Why questions have more to do with anger. And we're not even aware of our anger. You may be angry that your dad's a narcissist. I don't blame you. Those are justifiable feelings. But let's get to the anger rather than, why does my dad treat me this way? And what's so crazy is, and if you look at the sense of it on the surface, somebody comes to me and says, my dad's a narcissist, and I don't know why he treats me this way. Well, you just answered your question. Your dad's a narcissist. That's why he treats you that way. I mean, what other answers are you looking for? I mean, it's there in the question. I'm not making fun of anybody. I've asked all those questions, and I've asked them just that way. My mom has never accepted me. Why can't my mom accept me? Because she's not accepting of you. Never has been, probably never will be.
That's hard.
That's hard to hear. That's hard to hear. And I know it's hard to hear. And I do that with empathy, and I do that with caring and being connected to clients. When I do that, I'm not doing it to be mean, because I know how it feels. And I've asked all these other focus questions.
And that's the process. I felt, to be honest, when you said that, I felt it right over here. Okay, when you were saying your mom never accepted you and she never will, and I really did feel it. But that is the process, right? That is the process of of the person who's going through that, understanding, and then asking themselves, okay, what do I need to do, or what do I want to happen? How can this change? How can I change if this is the reality? This is the process of this type of change. Okay, it hurts, it stings, it often burns for a long time. But within that pain, we could start asking the right questions. that will hopefully
And I
direct
think,
us to ourselves.
and you've hit right on that very important core point. We then start asking the right questions, and we then start getting answers, because the answers are right here, and we right here with us, and we can start asking the right questions rather than staying in the trap of asking the wrong questions. And I remember a therapist, I've also read it in many books, answers are far less important than the right questions. The right questions are everything. Answers generally just come into the same box. I mean, they don't, that, you know, and if we just keep asking the same bad questions, we're going to get the same bad answers. And so answers are not a help. We need new questions. And that's why we were talking today about, you know, other focused questions versus self-focused questions, and how important that is.
Yeah, you've mentioned the question a few minutes ago. How, what was it? How, what part of my functioning is taking
What
part of this dysfunction, right? Something like
Yeah,
that.
what part do I play in the immature
Yeah.
functioning of my marriage, my family, my friendship, my whatever?
Yeah. So for me personally, that question, and in many ways I've asked that question, and I still do all the time. I find that question to be insanely helpful. And very often it takes time for me to get to that question. So I could be other focused for a while, and
For a
then
while,
and it
right?
suddenly hits, okay, what immaturity am I bringing into this? What part of my functioning is is not through the lens of self-differentiation? And it very often brings me to the answers, and sometimes even has an effect on the other person. So I'm saying
Absolutely.
sometimes because
Right.
I don't
Because it's
we shouldn't enter the situation expecting it to affect the other person, because it doesn't matter to me. I'm doing what's right to me or for me.
and I'm
But
self-focused.
right, but sometimes there is an effect that continues on. I have an example with a friend, a colleague, that I always thought of them as someone who doesn't appreciate my work.
Hmm.
And about a month ago, they started texting me, like after I've mentioned that I've done something and I made progress. They started expressing appreciation in the text. And the first time they did that, I did not respond back. Okay. I didn't say thank you. I didn't respond back. And I was thinking, it was so weird for me. It was so strange for me to receive appreciation from them. And then I thought to myself, and I was saying that I've been wanting, some part of me wants this appreciation for me, right? But
Right.
if I
Right.
don't respond positively to this appreciation, then they might feel that I don't appreciate it and not do it again. And I remember going over to them, and I spoke to them about it. I was like, to be honest, I always didn't understand why I don't experience any appreciation to my work. I put so much effort into it. And that one time that you did, I didn't know, it was so strange to me that I didn't respond. But I'm sorry for not responding, and just know that I really appreciated you appreciating me. And it was just so weird how, like, it took me time to realize that maybe I've never accepted their appreciation in the first place. Maybe they've tried in multiple times and I've never been open to it. And then they just stopped. They just stopped.
They just
So that was
stop.
a
Right.
very interesting experience for me.
We don't know how much we extinguish the good behavior of others because of our issues. And I mean extinguish in a behavioral model,
Yeah.
Skinnerian, you know, Skinner, the psychologist model, where we'll extinct that behavior because we don't respond to it, or we don't. I had recently a friend who was talking about her marriage, and she said, it drives me nuts when my husband does not respond to me. He doesn't tell me what, you know, I'll ask him something and he says nothing. And she was like, why doesn't my husband respond to me? Other focus question or self-focus question?
That's other
It's an
focus.
other focus question. So then when we started shifting to self, I suggested you might try something. What I want you to do the next time you ask him a question and he doesn't respond, say, hey, Steve, it's okay if you don't respond. And that messed up her whole trap that she was in and went, oh my gosh, I've got all kinds of feelings and thinking about that. And she was exploring herself at that point rather than focusing on him and why he doesn't. Now, there are some reasonable reasons why he doesn't. That's how he grew up. I mean, he does the same thing with his mom. He does the same thing with it. It wasn't personal to her. That was a pattern that he does. But she, out of her family, if he didn't respond, that was disrespect or putting down, or it was some kind of negative distancing or something. And so she would get into that and then get all anxious and upset that he didn't respond to her. And interestingly enough, she said, okay, I'm going to try this. I don't want to, but I'm going to try it. And she got herself all prepared for it and worked on it. And then when she asked him a question, he didn't respond. She said, it's okay. You don't have to respond to me. And then he responded in a way he hardly ever responds. And he answered her question. He even said more than what he would have said, because she dealt with her functioning in the system rather than let me get him to respond to me. You know, I'll go to therapy and tell the therapist he needs to get my husband to respond to me. Well, what if we do something different in our functioning and accept them for the way they are and who they are and be mature and make this response, because that may be a part of why this gets instincted, you know, or extinguished, because she pursues him, he withdraws from her. Then she pursues him, and then he withdraws some more. By her saying, it's okay for you to not respond, moves her back a little bit, and then he pursued. And that felt much more satisfying by shifting from the other focus to self-focus, and can break those patterns and dynamics that are so stuck and are so fossilized and rusted and just the way it's always been.
And I think that also when we are self-focused, we could continue what you were saying. We could realize that we ourselves don't know how to deal with what we were always asking for. And
exactly.
I see this so much in my relationships, where I could want a certain type of relationship, but then when somehow it comes around, or when it gets close to that, I could experience struggles in even maintaining what I've always wanted.
Exactly. Receiving it, having it.
Yeah.
Like, ooh, I didn't know I was so unprepared for that, for what I wanted, you know, and what I desired or needed. And we have, we're coming to the end of our time. I didn't know if there's any final thoughts that you would like to give to our viewers today, Yitz, or anything I've missed.
Well, I think this topic is massive, and we could probably do a few more videos going even deeper into it. I do think that the important message to take from this is that this is not a one-time thing. This is always finding your position. This is always differentiating. It's always asking the self questions and not the other focused questions. And this doesn't finish in a few weeks or in a workshop or in a call or two. But this is a process, and life always challenges us in ways that we will always have to ask these questions and always reposition ourselves. And that's okay. But the more we do it, the more I guess our brain gets used to asking the questions at the right times, and then we could feel calmer, and then we are less reactive to other focused situations where everyone else is other focused, but you're keeping your calm and you're keeping your own stance. So I think that's the most important thing to take from this, because it may sound like we're taking down, we're kind of taking all options from everyone, but that's not the case. And it's about learning to ask the right questions. It's about learning to to find yourself within these places. And yeah, and if anyone is interested in that type of process, that's what we're here for. So.
And you're right. We're talking about the downsides of so many options we do choose, and that there are some good options we can choose that are different than what we've been so patterned, imprinted, and trained to believe. Yeah. And it isn't flipping on a light switch. It's absorbing this and hearing this over and over. And that's what's been helpful for me. Reading, watching videos, and it's taken a long time to absorb this, so I become a new and different me. I might want to share, that's the book by Kathleen Smith, Everything Isn't Terrible by Dr. Kathleen Smith. You could take a look at that. I think it was out in last year, 2019. She's a Bowen Family Systems person. She was an associate professor, I think, at the Bowen Center in Washington, D.C. And I always look for new Bowen books that are out, like Harriet Lerner, Jenny Brown, Roberta Gilbert, Michael Kerr. They're even Brene Brown and folks like that have a Bowen perspective. I want to share with everyone, Yitz is a coach, and the practice that we have, he would be happy to work with you. You can schedule an appointment with him online on our website, jerrywiserelationshipsystems.com. You can also work with me if you want to contact me directly. The information's down below. I do have a master class or workshop coming up that's going to be in December or January. We're trying to get the date settled for that. And it's called Reducing Your Reactivity Masterclass. And I really think it's going to be a big help to folks. So I hope you'll look for that on the website, and we'll be sending out information. Please join the website, and then also join this YouTube channel. It only costs $1.99 a month, and it helps support doing these kind of live videos that take a lot of time, take a lot of planning, take hours to do, and it helps support that work that we're trying to put out there. So I hope you will join and subscribe to this YouTube channel.
Could I end with a quote of Dr. Bowen?
Of course.
He has a quote that I like, and it says, "You can't control a whole damn family, but you can control you. And anytime you can control you, the family is a healthier family." So.
Right on the money.
Yeah.
Yitz, it's been a joy and a pleasure to talk with you today. I enjoyed us working together and talking about this very important topic. And we probably could have gone for 3 hours on this topic. And maybe we should do a retreat in Hawaii and do, a 2-day workshop on, it's more difficult with the virus.
I would definitely like that.
It would be very enjoyable.
Yeah.
Well, I want to thank you all for joining us today and being patient with us, listening to us. I hope it's been a help to you. I hope you have a great day, and be wise.